defense of Gwenpool. This is a new filming location. It's kind of cramped. So I've seen a couple of videos recently. Capn Cummings did one. Wayward Nerd did one. Diversity Comics hinted that he was going to do one about Gwenpool and about why she didn't catch on. And to a certain extent, I can kind of understand it because I'm not sure a lot of people really get the premise of it, because you look at it and it just looks like it's going to be female Deadpool. And then when you actually explain the actual premise of it, what you find out is people don't really get intrigued so much as to get confused. It takes a little bit to kind of get into it. But I think that there's a lot more going on here. A lot of people blame the writer. I think the writer is what kept it going for as long as it did, Christopher Hastings. Capn Cummings, his video was about how basically this character was essentially a creation by Jordan White, the editor, and the writer, Christopher Hastings. Well, yeah, and he was basically saying that Gwenpool is an insert of Heather Antos, the kind of creepy editor. Now, that may be true, that may not be true. It is true that Gwenpool has the same hairstyle as Heather Antos. The blonde hair with the pink dip dye. But the thing is, if you look at Heather Antos, it's not exactly the same. For one thing, Gwenpool has blue eyes, whereas Heather Antos has brown eyes. I don't think Heather Antos is even a natural blonde, and she's about, according to Yellow Flash, who's actually met her, she's actually fairly tall for a woman, 5'8", 5'9", something like that, whereas Gwenpool is always depicted as being like 5'4", 5'5". So, she does superficially look like Heather Antos, but not really. If you didn't know that, you wouldn't know that, So we know for a fact that she initially started life as a costume only, because when Spider-Gwen became big, Marvel has a long history. Not just SJW Marvel, but Marvel, the company, has a long history of the second that something becomes big, you just run it into the ground until it stops moving. So, when Spider-Gwen became big, they made variant covers and designs for every superhero as Gwen Stacy. And for whatever reason, the Gwenpool design caught on with fans, so they put her in the Howard the Duck series as a test run, and then they ended up giving her a main series. Now the thing is, according to Jordan White, the creation was between him and Christopher Hastings. I think you can kind of see where the influence of Jordan White really starts to end, and where the influence of Christopher Hastings really starts to begin, because frankly, when I was reading this volume, because I really only read the later issues of Gwenpool, I haven't read the early ones. So, with this Gwenpool number 0, which is the collection of the Howard the Duck backup stories, and the holiday special, and then the first 3 or 4 issues of the main series, at first, the Gwenpool number 0 and the holiday special are kind of disappointing, because Gwenpool just kind of acts like kind of a low-rent version of the modern-day Harley Quinn, where she's just, LOL, so random, everything just works out for her, she doesn't have to try. You see it right here. She knows that she has plot armor because she knows she's a character in a comic book. She knows that readers are watching her, so she knows that this is just going to work out, and she ends up landing in a ending in safety. That's what this whole Howard the Duck miniseries is like. Gwenpool isn't really so much a character. She's more like a self-insert type of thing. Right? She feels a lot more like a Mary Sue than a real full-fledged character. She also looks a lot more like Heather Antos in this picture than she does later on when Gary Hiru starts to draw her. So I feel like that this early stuff is where the influence of Jordan White, and to a lesser extent Heather Antos, is felt much more keenly. Because Gwenpool is just this manic pixie dream girl type. She doesn't really have to struggle for anything, and nothing, everything just goes right for her. Right, so in the first issue, she sort of ends up kind of maybe learning a lesson, but not really, where she learns that it's bad to work with Hydra, which is like, it's not really much of a lesson. And then in this one, she ends up killing this weird snake dude fairly easily. and then somehow gets along with the other Marvel SJW heroes, even though she's kind of like a crazy psychopath from their perspective. So that part doesn't really make any sense. So I'll admit that by the point I got to the issue 1 of her main series, I was starting to get a little bit disillusioned. I was like, man, maybe my praise of the series has not been warranted. Maybe I was just reading things into it that I wasn't reading before. So issue 1 starts. I guess this was an oversized issue, and it's more of the same, despite the fact that she has no training, despite the fact that she has no in-universe skills at all. Everything just works out. Everything just gets handed to her. She meets this hacker guy who's going to help her, and it all just goes okay. And then we get to the end of the issue. I'm just going to skip to the end. Right, so she kills this top mercenary dude, whose name we don't even find out. And she takes credit for it, even though she basically did nothing. That other guy did everything. And then she and the hacker guy that she kind of saved get visited by MODOK, of all people. And MODOK tells her that basically he wants to give her a job. And what does Gwen do? So first she's like, doesn't know what to say, and then she laughs in his face, and she can't believe that MODOK is threatening her. So why does she laugh in his face? And it doesn't say it explicitly, but what it's hinted at is that in Gwen's mind, she was thinking of the fan version of MODOK, because MODOK is one of these characters that you see a lot that's sort of a joke. He's one of those ones that's like in the Twinkie ads that you see a lot. He's one that in the cartoons he's treated as sort of a one-off villain. He's never really taken seriously outside of the mainline Marvel universe. However, in universe, MODOK is incredibly powerful. Yes, he has a weird look, and yes, sometimes people make fun of the fact he has a big head, but for the most part, in universe, people take MODOK very seriously because he has immense psychic power. He's incredibly intelligent. He's basically a walking supercomputer that can destroy you with his mind. So, Gwen, we find out a limitation of her understanding of the Marvel Universe, and that's that she only knows what the average fan knows. So, she sees MODOK, she just sees a joke, and she doesn't think of what somebody like Captain America or what somebody like Ms. Marvel or Iron Man would see when they see MODOK, which is that this is a serious threat to be taken seriously. So, Gwen laughs in MODOK's face, and MODOK blows up her friend that she just met. Literally incinerates him. And this is where she realizes that just because she's in a fictional universe, just because from her perspective this is all just a lark, that doesn't mean there aren't consequences. That doesn't mean that characters are going to do exactly what she thinks they are. She doesn't treat MODOK like a threat, even though, once again, he's actually extremely powerful. And the person that she'd sort of gotten to know, her one friend that she had in this universe, gets blown up right in front of her. And so this is where she realizes that just because this is a fictional world, it doesn't mean there aren't consequences. And because she doesn't have any powers, because she's been reminded of MODOK's immense power, there's nothing that she can really do to stop him. So this is a complete tonal shift from not only the rest of this issue, but everything that had come up to this point, where she'd just been kind of a joke character. Sort of what every fan would like to think they would be like if they were put in this universe. And this is where she finds out that if you want your own series, you have to overcome stuff. So MODOK browbeats her into being his henchman. And the rest of the volume, the rest of the next couple of issues, aren't quite as serious as these last 2 pages here of this issue was, but there's still that sort of overhanging sense that, all of a sudden, things matter now. It's not just a joke like it was in these early issues. So MODOK basically forces her into doing kind of evil stuff. So MODOK is sort of doing this thing where he considers himself a hero now. He's trying to, in his way, make the world a better place, but he's not afraid to kill lots and lots of people to do it. So he tells her that they have to go off this sorcerer guy who's doing something evil. I'm not really sure what he's doing. It's not important because you never see him again. as they're in the middle of doing this, as the MODOK's henchmen are in the middle of doing this, female Thor shows up and stops them. And of course, female Thor is way more powerful than any one of them. But this is where Gwen's fourth world breaking knowledge comes in handy. She remembers female Thor's secret identity, which I didn't even know was a secret identity, so go figure, but she's able to use it to her advantage. You know, even though Gwen is greatly outmatched in terms of power by female Thor, she's able to use her fourth wall knowledge enough to distract her to use this rocket launcher. It ends up working out. It ends up that the MODOK's henchmen are able to get what female Thor wanted from the guy anyway, despite the fact that he's dead. So then we find out Gwen once again, she's reminiscing that she finds out that being a hero isn't just a matter of putting on a costume and acting like a superhero in a world full of superheroes. There's a bit more to it. Once again, we see Gwenpool realizing that this stuff has consequences, that you can't pretend to be a competent superhero forever when you have no skills. Like, this worked out for them, but it was essentially pure luck that it worked out. And then, you know, her friend is still dead. She's still a henchman for MODOK. And then here, Batroc the Leaper finds out that she doesn't even know how to use a gun or know how to hit people. One thing that detractors of Gwenpool say is that there's no consequences to anything that she does, but... And maybe that's true. It is true that it's kind of hard to integrate her with the wider Marvel universe. It's like when she knows everybody's secret identities, when she knows the hidden histories of everybody, it is kind of hard to put that in the wider thing. Like, the Gwenpool book does seem to sort of occupy its own place in the Marvel canon, and it seems like it would be kind of hard to use these versions of the characters elsewhere. So I will admit that, but, you know, we do see consequences for her personally. We do see that once the main series gets started, not everything comes easily to her. Her sort of fourth wall knowledge, her sort of the plot armor that she knows she has on her, that it has its limitations, and it's sort of circumstantial based on what's going on. We also find out that, you know, she's sort of learning what it means to be a superhero, because she thinks it's just about, you know, blowing people up with no consequences. But then Batroc the Leaper points out that if this is all a story, then why doesn't anybody get a happy ending? And Gwenpool tells him that, well, you're the bad guy. You know, you can't, you don't get a happy ending. But then Batroc points out, what about Captain America? What about Daredevil? What about all the other superheroes who just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and, you know, losing friends, losing family? You know, they get Pyrrhic victories, but then the villains just break out at the time. So even the good guys, quote unquote, in the story, they don't get happy endings either. And he's telling this to Gwenpool, who's realizing that she's now a superhero in her own story. So, you know, if somebody as venerable as Captain America doesn't get a happy ending, where does she get a happy ending? And we've seen in recent issues that Gwenpool is sort of realizing that her page count's running out, that she's going to die soon. So that's kind of what a lot of this tension seems to be in the book. It seems to be between what's sort of the fan idea of being a superhero, where it's doing stuff like this, you know, big crazy action sequences like this, where everything just works out, and the differences of like this quiet struggle within oneself. And Gwenpool thought she was going to be this all the time, but in point of fact, it's more stuff like this. It's more stuff realizing that it's not about the big crazy stuff. It's about the less exciting stuff that really makes a superhero. And that's what she's been finding out over these past couple of issues. So she does finally get one over on MODOK in this last issue. And she finally sort of is able to take control of her own story a little bit, but there's still a lot that she needs to learn, and there's still a lot that has to be worked out for her. So, you know, this is kind of a silly thing. This is kind of a niche thing, and it's not. I can see why it got canceled. It did go for. I mean, it's gonna go for like 25 issues. Modern Marvel, that's not bad. Once upon a time, it wouldn't have been that great, but Modern Marvel, you know, it's not that bad. But I think people are kind of, you know, kicking it while it's down a little bit. I just feel like that she does she does still have potential. I'm not 100% sure what you would do with her after this arc, but if they were to keep it in this vein, in this sort of more contemplative, more thoughtful idea, rather than just the LOL so random stuff that characterized her very early appearances. The character has a lot of potential. You just sort of have to get used to the idea that the premise is going to be a little bit different from what you may expect when you hear about sort of a pink female Deadpool. So, you know, tell me what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.